Mixdown, or bouncing the disc, is what we need to do now. We have finished working on our mix. We have the tracks where we like them. We have it all sounding good. And now we need to be able to deliver it to somebody else. So what do? Do we just send our Pro Tools session and all the files to our friends and have them listen to it on their Pro Tools rig? No, we don't do that because not everybody has a rig like this. And this file is huge because it's got audio files for everything. And what if they don't have the same plugins and such? So we want to incorporate all of the processing, all of the adjustments we've made into final deliverable tracks. Now those can either be mono tracks, stereo tracks, or surround tracks, but for the most part it's going to be stereo tracks. So 2 tracks, a left and a right. And those tracks are going to be basically the output 1 and 2 that we've been sending our mix to speakers and headphones. Output 1 is our left and output 2 is the right. So what we're going to do is take our wonderful mix that we've set up and worked on and are sending already to output 1 and 2, and we're going to capture that output and we're going to make a stereo file out of that. Now alternatively, we could physically take and route that output to something like a CD burner or something like that, or a tape recorder, and mix our song to another format like that. But we're going to do this internally, and that's what bouncing the disc or Mixdown is. So the first step of this process is that we need to go and define our start and end time. So we need to say, I want to mix down from here to here. And so you'll notice that if I select a portion of the track, a distance, an area here, and hit play, it's going to start at this little down blue arrow, and it's going to end at this up blue arrow. And that's how in Pro Tools it defines the mark in and mark out points. What we want to do is we want to have this blue arrow be located at the start of our session or the start of our track, and the up arrow to be at the end. And it doesn't really matter how far down we have selected or which tracks we have selected. It just matters where our start and end time are. Now a lot of people will freak out about which tracks are selected, but all that matters is what we hear. If we play it and the whole mix is playing, when we bounce to disc, that's the same thing that's going to happen. Okay? And so what we want to do is we want to create our start time first. Now the easiest way to do this in our circumstance here is to actually create a marker that's our start. And so we're going to get our cursor right to the right point right before that piano lick starts. Okay, and I'm going to hit the plus arrow here. Now we haven't gone over memory locations and markers because they really differ depending on which digital audio workstation you're using, but in here we're going to just use it for our start and end time, so we'll call this start. But they are great to use for marking your verses and choruses and such as you're mixing. Okay, so now let's zoom out a little bit and we'll go to the end of the session. Okay, and we got to make sure that we put our end marker after all the tracks have faded away and all the reverb tails have ended and such. And as we can see, most of our tracks end right here and the reverb ends before all these tracks do. So we'll just put our cursor there, do the same thing, hit the plus arrow, and we're going to call this end. Okay, so now if we zoom out, we can see there's our start and there's our end. And if we click on one of these and then click on the other while holding shift, we're going to select from the start to the end. And if you look, you'll notice that we have our down arrow at the beginning and our up arrow at the end. So we have effectively created a selection saying start here and end here. And if we went through and listened right now, we would hear the entire song from start to finish, and we could see, yes, we have the whole thing selected. But at this point we can take and go to our file menu, and we'll go to bounce to disc. And this brings up our bounce dialog, which is where we're going to define some very important things with our bounce. The first one is, what is our bounce source? Now, as I've said before, we're going to take this output we're already using to go to our speakers and headphones, and we're going to capture our mix from that stereo output, and that is our analog 1 and 2. Maybe we're sending out analog 3 and 4 or something like that. That's where you'd want to change that and define whatever you're using for that. But that's how that is occurring. We're saying the source of our mix that we're creating is from this analog 1 and 2. Then we want to choose our file type. Now we want to keep it as WAV or AIFF because we're going to do some mastering afterwards. We're not ready to convert it to an MP3 yet, and we want to keep as much quality as possible. Then as far as format, we don't want two separate files. We want stereo interleaved. We could make it two separate files, but definitely to prepare to go to a CD or something like that, we need to be stereo interleaved. And then as far as bit depth goes, we're going to make it 24-bit because we're going to do some mastering. If we wanted to finish our mix and such, we could convert it to 16, but we're going to do that in the mastering phase. And then our sample rate is going to be 44.1. We're going to also do convert after bounce because that just keeps everything a little better processing wise and such, and then we'll hit bounce. And now what we have to do is define where we're going to save this file that we create. A lot of people make the mistake of trying to save it on the CD, but this is actually, there's a multiple step process here. That first we have to bounce it to disk, D-I-S-K disk, not D-I-S-C compact disk. Okay, disk as in a hard disk, as in the computer disk. And so we're going to save it with our audio files here, and I'm going to go ahead and call it Mix 1. And once I hit save, it's going to count down and play the track. And that is how we bounce the disc.